August of 1969, film star Sharon Tate and 4 others in her Benedict's Canyon home were savagely murdered. The following night, a few miles away, Lino LaBianca and his wife Rosemary were killed in a similar fashion. 2 months later, Susan Atkins, who was in custody charged with the murder of rock musician Gary Hinman, began bragging to a cellmate of her involvement in the death of Sharon Tate. This major break led the police to Charles Manson and his family. What was to follow was one of the most celebrated cases in criminal history. Charles Manson and his companions were all tried, convicted, and sentenced to death. In 1972, the California Supreme Court overturned the death penalty, thereby making everyone on death row eligible for parole. What we are about to see is some rare footage of a recent parole hearing for Charles Tex Watson, Manson's chief executioner. Watson talks about the death of Sharon Tate.
Not exactly, no. In what areas would you disagree? Well, I disagree with the fact that Sharon Tate was hung while I was president.
He didn't say that. He said
while she was still alive.
She was hung while she was still alive.
I don't remember that part of her hanging. I don't remember that.
You deny hanging her at that time?
Yes, I do. I haven't denied too much at all because I'm guilty. I haven't denied too much of the crime that has been brought against me. I've confessed to all of it, but there are some areas such as that I cannot confess to because it would be a lie. I don't remember her being hung.
All prisoners in California who are sentenced to life prison terms, or in many cases those who have been sentenced to death penalty, but in this state the death penalty has been overturned twice, so all those people come before the parole board.
As far as me taking the lead role, I was the male at the crime. But at that time I did not consider myself a leader. I considered myself more of a follower of Charles Manson in carrying out his orders.
The epitome of that...
Bob Carter remembers a Leslie Van Houten parole hearing.
She said that she felt as though she failed the group. And I asked her, I said something to the effect, well, you know, you guys slaughtered two people, you wrote on the walls, and you did this and the other. What possibly could you have done that you didn't do? And she said something to the effect that she was told, or she felt as though Charlie wanted her to take their eyeballs out and put them on the wall.
Do you recall who stabbed who?
Yes, I recall basically who stabbed who.
Could you elaborate on that?
Yes, I could. As the records show, I did shoot Steve Parent when I went into the estate. I did stab Jay Sebring after he was shot by myself.
Mr. Watson is very strong-willed. He is determined to do it his own way. He's been recommended by the parole board to do certain things, participate in some with some mental health counseling and some programming in that area, and he has steadfastly refused up to the time I left the board to do that, and he has substituted his own program, which mainly is working in the chapel, a religion that he has more or less developed himself, and so he's a very strong-willed person.
Charles Watson talks about his religion and fellow Manson member Bruce Davis.
About the change that has taken place in our life, about what Christ Jesus can do to a person and saving that person and healing that person from the inside out. Mr. Davis is a legitimate born-again Christian, and we have a very good relationship. Matter of fact, we live together on the honor unit. He lives 5 doors down from me. And as far as our past never comes up in the chapel, in our relationship, or anything. We minister together the gospel under the guidance and the direction of Dr. Stanley L.H. McGuire.
During the time I was on the board, I was impressed by the callousness and the inhumanity that people could show to others, also by the repetitive nature of the process of the board. Hopefully, they will continue to appoint high-quality people who have law enforcement or criminal justice backgrounds, have either been probation officers, cops, or something like that. Because things are so sanitized 8-10 years later, when that hearing is held and this person is sitting there before you and they look just like Mr. Middle Class or Miss Middle Class, and they've had plenty of time to prepare, they have an attorney, and they've been coached, and the record is not complete, and or you don't have, the individuals on the board don't really have the time to go through every page of every record. You kind of skim, you do the best you can in the time you have to prepare, and they can mold the record to their advantage. A lot of it gets lost in the telling and the retelling and as the years go by.
In 1978, I became the first district attorney in California history to attend a life or parole hearing. That was a hearing for Patricia Krenwinkel, one of the defendants in the Tate LaBianca murder case. I was absolutely shocked by what I saw at this hearing. There were 3 non-lawyers on the board. Patricia Krenwinkel was there, and she had her attorney there. She told the board that she was at the Tate residence, but didn't do a thing. She watched everybody else participate in murder. I had to stop the proceedings and fill the board in on what she actually did, how she chased Abigail Folger out of the rear of the house with an upraised knife, pounced on her in the front yard, and stabbed her 28 times.
And I believe that if someone's record indicates that from an early age, preteen or teen, and they have been assaultive, and they've been antisocial, and they have ended up taking a life or more than one life, that my only prediction is they will probably do it again.
Charles Manson and his followers are all serving life sentences in California prisons, and all are eligible for parole. In August of 1979, in a neighborhood park in Jacksonville, Florida, Otis Toole and Henry Lucas met by chance and began an association that supposedly led to hundreds of murders. Henry Lucas was arrested on a minor weapons charge in Texas. Otis Toole was arrested in Florida and charged with arson. In the next few months, they began to confess to any and all murders that they were questioned about. Henry Lucas led authorities to numerous graves and freely talked about all the people that he and Otis had murdered. Most of the victims were strangers, had been tortured, and were the subjects of cruel deaths. Authorities believe that the victims were all sexually assaulted after death. Most of Henry Lee Lucas's victims were young females, as opposed to Otis Toole's victims, who were young males. Otis suddenly confessed to a celebrated murder in Florida when he told police that he had kidnapped and murdered 6-year-old Adam Walsh. Adam Walsh disappeared from a Hollywood, Florida shopping center and was to become the subject of one of the most exhaustive searches ever. A short time later, his body was found in the Florida swamps. Adam had been brutally murdered. His death created national interest and led to the signing of the Missing Children's Bill. This case was instrumental in the printing of pictures of missing children on milk cartons and shopping bags, and was the subject of 2 major films. Meanwhile, in Texas, Henry Lee Lucas confessed to more murders and led police to more grave sites. However, by this time, the authorities began to suspect that most of the confessions were fabricated. In Florida State Prison in Stark, Florida, Otis Toole, in his first ever interview, talks to Tom Heaton about the confessions, the death of his niece,